The terminal buzzed with movement. People rushed, announcements echoed, trolleys rolled. But one man stood calm, steady. It was Captain Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso. No convoy. No camera flashes. Just a single black duffel bag slung over his shoulder and a calm, observant look in his eyes. He was waiting quietly at Gate 23 to board Air France Flight AF 852 to Ouagadougou. No aid, no press, no formalities. Just him. That's how he liked it. Je préfère la simplicité, he often said. Power to him didn't need to be dressed in gold or guarded by 10 men. He had just wrapped up a high-stakes diplomatic meeting in Europe, talks that stirred the minds of many. He had spoken not just as a president, but as a son of Africa. The future of Africa belongs to us, he had declared boldly during the summit, and we will no longer ask for permission to be free. Now, boarding pass in hand, he approached the gate. A smiling Air France staff member greeted him. Bonjour, monsieur. Passeport s'il plate. She looked at him, dark jacket, plain jeans, no designer labels, no sign of officialdom. Just another traveler, maybe a student, maybe a teacher. She had no idea who he was. He handed her his passport without a word. Merci, Monsieur Traoré. Bon voyage. No recognition. No extra attention. He smiled softly to himself. Parfait, he murmured. That's exactly how he wanted it. Captain Ibrahim Traoré slid into seat 3A near the window. He placed his bag under the seat, leaned back quietly and gazed out at the runway lights. The murmurs had already started. C'est lui? Le Président? Non, impossible. Le Président n'y voyage pas comme ça. Mais il lui ressemble quand même. He heard the whispers but didn't react. Just like any other African man, he bowed his head slightly, his hands resting calmly on his knees. He had no desire to correct them. After all, he believed in humility and simplicity. While he sat in economy, dressed in simplicity, a small scene unfolded near the boarding door. A tall, sharp-featured French man in a tailored navy suit, designer shades still on indoors, and shoes that could pay a man's rent for 6 months, stormed in with a slight air of annoyance. Monsieur Laurent Dubois, the gate agent said nervously, Je suis désolé but business class is completely full. We can offer you a seat in premium economy temporarily. He stopped in his tracks, stiff as stone. Pardon? Moi. Laurent Dubois, CEO de Sirius Oil International? Je paye plus en taxe que la moitié de passagers, et vous me parlez de premium economy? His assistant tried to calm him down, but Dubois waved him off like a fly. I don't take no for an answer, he snapped in English. Find me a seat. Or remove someone from business. The flight crew exchanged awkward glances. People in the cabin turned to see the commotion. Meanwhile, Ibrahim Traoré looked up from his seat briefly, watching the drama with quiet eyes. He didn't move, didn't flinch. Just smiled subtly. Power isn't in how loud you speak, he whispered to himself in Mossy, but in how calm you stay. Laurent Dubois, the CEO of Sirius Oil International, stood at the boarding gate, clearly agitated. His voice was sharp and his pride even sharper. I don't understand how this is possible, he said, waving his boarding pass in front of the gate agent. I paid for business class. Find me a seat. I'm really sorry, monsieur, the young woman replied nervously. Business class is full. Dubois's eyes narrowed. Non. This is not acceptable. Call your superior. He stood tall, expecting the world to adjust to him, as it often did. Moments later, a smartly dressed woman with a calm face and an air of authority arrived. Her name tag read Claire. She looked professional, neat, and ready for damage control. Bonjour, monsieur, she said. I'm Claire, the boarding supervisor. What seems to be the problem? Dubois didn't wait for her to finish. I'm Laurent Dubois, CEO of Sirius Oil International. I booked business class, and now your staff is telling me there's no seat? Ridiculous. Claire kept her cool. I completely understand, sir. Let me double-check our system. She tapped on her tablet and frowned slightly. It looks like we had an unexpected overbooking, she said. But don't worry. I'll make sure we get you a proper seat. You'd better, Dubois muttered. I don't take non for an answer. Claire gave a polite smile. Of course, monsieur. Please give me a moment. As she stepped away to sort things out, Dubois adjusted his jacket, still fuming. Inside the soft-lit cabin of business class, all seats were taken. The air smelled of expensive perfume, warm towels, and quiet entitlement. Flight supervisor Claire entered the cabin, her heels clicking softly against the carpet. She scanned the seats one by one, her tablet in hand. Every seat was occupied, except there was a problem. She needed to find one to offer to the furious French oil tycoon still waiting at the gate. Then her eyes landed on seat 3A. There sat a tall African man in casual clothes, black t-shirt, jeans, no designer logos, no flashy watch. Just calm confidence. He was reading a book quietly. Claire gave a polite smile and approached him. "Bonsoir, monsieur," she said gently. "I hope you're enjoying your seat." "Yes, I am," the man replied with a warm, even voice. "Is something wrong?" Claire shifted her weight slightly. "Actually, we've had a small issue with our bookings tonight. One of our high-priority guests needs a business class seat. Would it be possible just for this flight to move you to economy?" The man looked up at her slowly, eyes calm but sharp. It was Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso. But in his plain clothes no one recognized him. "Why me?" he asked, still seated. "Why not ask someone else?" Claire hesitated. "Sir, you're the only one on our list without elite frequent flyer status. It's just airline protocol." Ibrahim leaned back in his seat. "So, because I'm not on some elite list, and maybe because I don't look like a CEO or a diplomat, you ask me to leave my seat?" She blinked. "Monsieur, please. It's not personal. I assure you." "But it feels personal," he said calmly but firmly. "I paid for this seat. I followed your procedure. And I'm not moving." Passengers nearby turned their heads. The air in the cabin shifted. A few whispers began. Claire stood there unsure. She looked at her tablet again, then back at the man. "You don't know who I am, do you?" Ibrahim asked softly. Claire was silent. "I'm not asking for privilege," he added. "Just respect. I'll stay right here." And with that he returned to his book. Calm, steady, unbothered. It wasn't rude. It wasn't loud. But there was something in the way he said it. A weight in his voice. A quiet power. Claire stood still for a moment. She felt it, that presence. Like a man used to giving orders, not receiving them. Like a man who didn't need a uniform or title to be respected. Claire stood frozen for a second. Then quietly turned around and walked back toward the cockpit, heart racing. The cabin grew quieter. Eyes began to wander. A man reading a newspaper slowly lowered it, his curiosity piqued. A couple in the aisle seat whispered to each other in hushed tones. One passenger mumbled under his breath. Everyone saw Claire walking back down the aisle, tablet in hand, brows tight. No one dared stop her. But the tension was now visible, floating in the space between the leather seats and the polished windows. Claire's eyes darted again. Then she stopped in front of seat 5C, where a young black African man, barely in his 20s, sat quietly with his headphones around his neck and a backpack between his feet. He looked up, startled, when she stopped. "Sir," she said, her voice clipped, "I'm going to need you to relocate to another class of the plane." The boy blinked in confusion. "Sorry? I don't understand." "Why?" Claire forced a smile. "There's just been a seating issue. We'll sort it out. Please stand up." The boy looked around, unsure, embarrassed. His fingers fidgeted over the zipper of his hoodie. But before he could move, a deep, calm voice came from a few rows behind. "Enough." It was President Ibrahim Traoré. He rose from his seat, towering and composed. He didn't shout. He didn't rush. He just walked forward slowly, steadily, until he was standing between Claire and the young man. "Is this how you solve your problems?" he asked gently. "By picking only those who look a certain way? The quiet ones? The brown ones?" Claire's face went pale. Passengers were now fully watching. No one whispered anymore. "Sir," she said, trying to stay composed, "please return to your seat. Do not cause a commotion." "Je ne cause pas de problème," Ibrahim replied, still calm. "But I will not let this slide. Twice you've tried to remove only African passengers. Why?" Claire swallowed hard. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her tablet. "Sir, please sit down." "I will," he said, eyes locked with hers. "But first I want you to answer. Are you doing your job based on procedure, or based on skin?" Claire didn't answer. She stepped back, mumbling under her breath in French, "Ces gens toujours en train de faire du brut." Ibrahim heard her. So did the boy. So did half the cabin. And now the silence in the plane was heavier than any words. Ibrahim slowly turned back to his seat, saying nothing more. The young man sat still, wide-eyed, his heart racing, not from fear anymore but from pride. A quiet ripple of respect moved through the cabin. The doors to the business class cabin opened, and Laurent Dubois, the French CEO, was escorted in like a man of royalty. His tailored suit looked even more expensive in the soft lighting of the plane. His every step seemed calculated, as though he were walking a red carpet. He entered, his presence commanding the attention of the entire cabin. He paused for a moment, a slight smirk curling on his lips as he surveyed the room, the hum of conversation fading around him. "Bienvenue, monsieur," the flight attendant said with a deep bow, as though he were royalty. She moved aside to let him settle in. A second flight attendant rushed over, already pouring champagne into a crystal glass. She handed it to him with reverence. "Your seat, sir," she said softly, motioning to the seat next to Ibrahim Traoré. But it wasn't just any seat. No, this was the best one, closer to the window, slightly more spacious. As the CEO settled in, a third attendant appeared with a silver platter full of fresh fruit, grapes, strawberries, sliced pineapples arranged artfully. "Monsieur Dubois," she said in perfect French, "we've also prepared a selection of fine wines for you. Would you like to try the Bordeaux or the Chablis?" He waved a hand, dismissing the fruit. "I'll take both," he said coolly. The attendants nodded, eager to please. Meanwhile, Ibrahim Traoré sat back in his seat, watching the scene unfold quietly. He made no move to look at the CEO, no sign of recognition. His calm was unshaken. Dubois leaned back in his seat, champagne glass in hand, and looked around. His eyes fell on Ibrahim's seat but quickly moved on. It was clear who had the spotlight now. Every inch of the CEO's treatment screamed privilege. The sparkling champagne, the delicate fruits, the perfectly chosen wines. It wasn't just about comfort, it was about status. He was treated like a king without question, without hesitation. And there, just a few seats away, sat President Ibrahim Traoré, unnoticed by most, humble in demeanor but powerful in presence. He didn't need the attention. He didn't need the luxury. The plane ascended, the soft hum of the engines a steady background to the tense atmosphere in the cabin. Outside, the vast blue sky stretched endlessly, but within the plane, the mood remained heavy. It was clear that something was amiss. The subtle power dynamics were in play, unnoticed by some and ignored by others. Claire, having made her way through the business class once again, approached President Ibrahim Traoré. She smiled in a way that was too polite to be genuine, but too tight to be natural. "Monsieur," she said, her tone still polite but distant, "what would you like to drink?" Ibrahim looked up at her calmly, his eyes steady. "Water will be fine," he said, his voice as composed as ever. Claire nodded, not offering anything more. No apology, no acknowledgement of the earlier tension. She simply gave a fake smile and turned away, her steps swift as she moved on to her next task, ignoring the gravity of her earlier behavior. She walked directly over to Laurent Dubois, who was leaning back in his seat, half laughing at his own joke. He looked every bit the part of the arrogant, entitled man he wanted to be. "Ah, Monsieur Dubois," Claire greeted, her voice lighter now. "So good to see you comfortable. Tell me, why are you heading to Burkina Faso?" Dubois chuckled, clearly enjoying the attention. "Burkina Faso needs us," he said, his words dripping with the kind of ignorance only someone so removed from reality could speak. "We are bringing light to a city of chaos. Without us, they'd be lost." Claire smiled, nodding in agreement as though she were acknowledging some great truth. "Oh yes, of course. They're so lucky to have people like you," she said, her tone drenched in false admiration. She didn't realize the weight of her words. The irony was thick in the air. What Claire failed to realize was that sitting just a few rows away was the president of Burkina Faso, the very man whose country she and the CEO had just so carelessly insulted. Ibrahim Traoré, quiet, composed and unflinching, did not move a muscle. His expression remained calm, his eyes focused on the view outside the window. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He simply watched as Claire and the CEO reveled in their ignorance. The message was clear to anyone who paid attention. The CEO, with his wealth and status, was treated like royalty. The rest, including a humble African leader, were disregarded, whether knowingly or unknowingly. The plane continued its smooth flight, but for Ibrahim, the weight of the situation felt far heavier than the altitude. Claire didn't know it yet, but she had just insulted the president of the country she so ignorantly spoke about. And soon she would learn. But the contrast was clear for anyone who had eyes to see. As the cabin lights dimmed and the hum of the flight settled into a rhythm, whispers floated like ghosts through the air. Passengers had begun to relax, some drifting into slumber, others sipping their final glass of wine. But in row 3C, a quiet voice broke the silence. A young African nurse, maybe in her early 30s, returning home after years of studying and working in Marseille, leaned toward her neighbor, a middle-aged man lost in thought. "C'est notre president," she whispered. "That man? They are humiliating him. That's President Ibrahim Traoré." Her neighbor glanced at her, then at President Ibrahim, but said nothing. Just nodded, then slowly looked away. The truth was too big, too heavy, too dangerous to carry out loud. Around them, silence swallowed courage. Nobody dared to speak. President Ibrahim sat still in his seat, head resting slightly to the side as he stared out of the window. The moon had given way to the early blush of dawn, and the sky outside now glowed with soft amber streaks. He hadn't closed his eyes once. He wasn't angry. He wasn't sad. There was a kind of serenity in him that even the sky couldn't ignore. A man of peace but not of silence. But even peace has its limits, and soon his patience would meet its edge. Then came the voice of the captain, calm and commanding over the intercom, breaking through the stillness of the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching Ouagadougou International Airport. Please fasten your seatbelts and prepare for landing." The hum of conversation faded again as people braced for descent. The aircraft tilted slightly, and the lights of the city below began to sparkle through the windows. Claire walked through the aisle one last time, her smile still intact, unaware that her world was about to shift. Laurent Dubois sipped the last of his champagne, ready to descend like a king into a land he thought needed saving. But the land was already ruled, and its ruler was watching. As the plane taxied to a smooth stop on the runway, the morning sun cast on the red sand. From the window, a foreign passenger, an older American tourist in a beige safari hat, leaned forward and squinted. "I see soldiers down there," he muttered, alarm in his voice. "Are we landing into a war zone?" A few heads turned. Others peered out of their windows. The sight was undeniable. Military vehicles lined the runway, soldiers stood in formation, red carpets rolled out with precision. An armored motorcade was parked nearby, sleek black cars glinting under the morning light. Laurent Dubois, still sipping the last of his champagne, leaned toward the window and spotted the red carpet, the soldiers standing tall, and the line of black official vehicles gleaming under the sun. With a smug grin he turned to Claire. Finally he said in a low voice, adjusting his gold cufflinks. "You see all that down there? C'est pour moi. They're here for me." Claire chuckled lightly, clearly impressed. "You must be very important to them." He gave a self-satisfied nod. "Of course. Burkina Faso needs my company. Oil infrastructure. I'm practically their future." Claire smiled, then peered out again with admiration. But seconds later something strange happened. The plane door opened, and a soldier in full ceremonial uniform stepped inside. His boots echoed softly on the cabin floor. His presence was commanding. Passengers turned. Whispers began again. He scanned the cabin quickly, his face serious, and then walked straight down the aisle, not toward Dubois, not even glancing at him. He stopped in front of seat 3C. Claire's face changed. The soldier stood firm and gave a crisp, sharp salute. "Mon President." "Welcome home," and there was a dead silence. President Ibrahim Traoré looked up with that same quiet smile. "Come." Unbothered. But this time his aura filled the entire cabin. He rose from his seat with quiet dignity. The entire business class, no, the entire plane, was frozen in realization. Claire's mouth parted slightly in shock. The champagne in Dubois' hand trembled. And every assumption in that cabin crumbled in one heartbeat. The man in simple clothes, the man they overlooked, the man they tried to remove from his seat, was the president of Burkina Faso. As President Ibrahim Traoré stepped off the plane, the entire tarmac came alive. A military band struck up the national anthem. Cameras clicked. Soldiers saluted. Ministers and dignitaries bowed their heads in respect as the president of Burkina Faso descended the stairs with quiet power, still dressed in his modest attire, still calm, still composed. But inside the aircraft, tension replaced silence. Just moments after the president exited, a rugged soldier, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing tactical gear and dark sunglasses, stepped into the cabin with authority. The clink of his boots echoed like a warning bell. He moved through the aisle without hesitation, heading directly to Claire and Laurent Dubois, who were still frozen in their seats. He stopped before them and removed his sunglasses slowly, his voice cold and sharp. "Claire Fontaine and Laurent Dubois, you are under arrest." The passengers gasped. "What?" Claire stuttered. "Arrest?" Dubois exclaimed, trying to rise from his seat. But the soldier's voice cut through his protest like a blade. "You are charged with racial discrimination, verbal disrespect to the nation of Burkina Faso, and obstruction of presidential protocol." Claire's face went pale. Her legs weakened. Du Bois tried to chuckle nervously. This must be a mistake. I didn't know, he didn't look like. The soldier didn't flinch. The president owes you no costume to earn your respect. Claire tried to plead, please, we didn't mean to offend anyone. I was just following. The soldier raised a hand. You were following your bias. He signaled, and two uniformed officers entered the plane from behind. One stood beside Claire. The other beside Du Bois. This way, the soldier commanded. As they were escorted out, the passengers stared in stunned silence. Some with hidden smiles, others with shame in their eyes. Outside the plane, two black SUVs awaited, engine humming, windows tinted, and soldiers standing alert. Claire and Du Bois were escorted down the stairs separately, each flanked by stern-faced military officers. No special treatment. No more champagne. Just consequences. The airport cameras didn't miss a beat. Journalists and civilians alike captured the moment. A French billionaire and a white airline supervisor being placed into black government vehicles under military guard. Within minutes, it was all over the internet. French CEO arrested in Burkina Faso. Ibrahim Traoré defends equality on Air France flight. The videos were shared across Africa, in France, in the diaspora. The Élysée Palace in Paris responded quickly, requesting a diplomatic dialogue. But President Ibrahim Traoré was already at the National Assembly, standing before the cameras and his people. He wore no gold chain, no designer suit, just his signature military jacket and a calm face full of resolve. He stepped up to the podium, paused as the room settled, and then spoke clearly. In Burkina Faso, we believe in dignity. We believe that every citizen, whether a farmer, a student, a nurse, or even a president, must be respected. And let me be clear, no one is above the law. Not even a billionaire. Not even someone backed by a foreign government. Chez nous, la justice n'y porte pas de costume. Here, justice does not wear a costume.